Hello everyone, my name is Carl. I go with my artist producer name as Galatra, and I'm here to bring a tutorial about the High Slicer, which is a beat slicing tool that is designed by High Plugins, where it allows you to edit or cut your samples in perfectly sync without sacrificing your CPU usage. Okay, as you can see, with the program, that how the High Slicer program is designed. Okay, I'm going to explain all the features in just a minute, how everything works here with your DAW. Okay, now just to let you know, this is the purchase version that I bought directly from the High Plugins website, which I'll have to mention in the description below. And just to let you know that this is not the free version. Okay, the free version has some limited features that will not gain access, just which is known as the step slicer sequencer here, where you'll not gain access to the step secret features. But on the other hand, this tutorial will allow you to work the same way with the program's usage and features, but it's not guaranteed it will have the same way as it works in the free version, since the purchase version has more features and access to the step sequencer as you play along. So this program plugin costs about like $50 US altogether, but what I'm about to tell you here is I believe that this plugin is a better choice to work with rather than the FL Studio's SliceX, as we all know and love. But for now, we'll get to the chase on how to work on this beat slicing program for your convenience. Now, before I continue on, I want to make a big thank you shout out to the support team at High Plugins for fixing this bug issue that I had when I first purchased this program, where most of the samples do not play under 100 beats per minute. So because of that, now that I downloaded their latest update from their site, okay, this actually helped fix the bug issue, where I can now play any sample under 100 beats per minute without any kind of hiccups or nuances or problems and so forth, which is great to hear. So I want to make a big thank you and shout out support to the High Plugin support team for fixing this issue. So let's go ahead and move on with the tutorial. Now, as you notice here, how this plugin setup actually works, we're going to go straight to the manual how the High Slicer plugin is actually done. Now, as I pull up the menu, you can see the diagram how everything is set into place. So you start off with sequencer, and then slicer, and then FX chain, and then output. So as you can see of the diagram description, the slicer can actually load samples from any MP3 or WAV file or AIFF. Okay, so what this actually states here is when you pull up the program the first time, as you can see here, you're going to see a bunch of numerous options and buttons and values that you're allowed to change when you load up your sample. Now, please keep in mind that some of them look familiar with the FL Studio's SliceX, but this one has more advanced features compared to the SliceX controls where some of them don't have access with. But on the other hand, I'm going to get to each of those features one by one in just a minute. So the first thing you have to do is, before you load your sample, you have to make sure you set your tempo right here on your DAW to make sure it matches to the sample that you're loading up to your high slicer program. So let's load up a sample right now that I'm going to give you example on how to work with this plugin based on what I load up from this Cymatics Chaos sample pack. So I got this Cymatics Chaos pack since last week, and it's a really hot sample program where they have created so much excellent sample work onto their beats. And I'm going to load one of them from the R&B sample pack line, which is called Desires, and is under 97 beats per minute. So as I said before, first you set up your BPM tempo down to 97. Or, of course, the faster way is you can right click it and then just type in the value here and just put 97. And that'll give you 97 beats per minute. Now once that's done, then you can go ahead, and there's two ways you can actually open up your sample. Of course, what the manual suggests here is you go to browser, okay, and you load up your files that way to select the sample that you want to load up. On the other hand, the second method is to drag and drop your sample from your DAW, like so, and then you just load it up to your program, just like that. Now, once that's done, now you can go ahead and select the number of slices that you wanted to separate the sections of your sample to play along with. So let's go, for instance, on this tutorial, we'll select 4 slices that we wanted to engage. So this program actually analyzes the sample's rate notches to help it perfectly synchronize your samples, okay, to arrange it at an order where you can play it along completely. And for this, I'm going to show you how it's done. So when you select the number of slices that you want, let's say 4, you click the slice button, and that will actually even out the slices that you assign altogether in an automatic fashion. So when you assign your slices that you wanted, okay, for this example, now we go to the slice section here where you wanted to assign the number of samples that you wanted to slice in. So of course, with this symbol here that represents like a piece of slice, you can now slice. You can now assign on the first box section here that you wanted to assign the first section of the sample as slice 1, and then same thing with the second box here. You assign it to slice 2, and then you do slice 3, and then 4, and then so on. Excuse me again. Now, once you assign this slicer option here, then on the next section, as you can see, this is like these on and off buttons where you actually can mute the sample on each of the sections where you want it to play, depending on your track, just like so. And then on the next section are your division boxes here. The division boxes, which we have to explain, is that this actually helps separate the cutoff time for each of the samples that you're playing off it when you're playing around with the step sequencer. Okay, which I'll also get to that part. But for now, we're just gonna leave everything on default by playing this whole box image where it actually to play the whole sample shape. The next part here is the waveforms. So when I pull up the box section on Slicer 1, you'll see various amounts of waveforms, lines, and shapes that you can allow to change the sample's pitch, speed, or waveform rate, whatever, to make it like a DJ effect, like scratching or warping sounds to make the sample more enticing. So as you can see with the first row here of the line shapes, the slanted line represents the normal rate of your sample being played at a normal speed based on your tempo. And then the second part here allows you to set the wave rate at a faster pace, but then it will slowly graduate up to a normal pace. And then same thing here, it'll just turn sharply, but then we'll go back to a normal rate afterwards. And then when you invert, and then the inverted lines here, it actually does the reverse. It actually will just play the sample at a very slightly slow rate, but then it will come back fast. Okay, and then so on. As you can tell, on the next sections, it will show you like double lines or crisscross lines and so on, or hill-like waveforms that will actually change your rate of the wave length speed, or scratching, or warping, designing, depending on the track that you create with, to make this all, you know, surprising or exciting type of mood, depending on your track. And then when you get to the bottom here, okay, you see like a bunch of X's, meaning that those are considered like, you know, customizable if you wanted to change the waveform shapes or the rate of your sample speed. But of course, that might be later on to edit it, probably in the next update. Okay, when that so happens, but only time will tell. So once you're done with all of that, the next part here is the reverse sections on each of your sample tracks. So you can actually try to reverse one sample here when it plays back, okay? And here on the other section, you got your semitone signs, where you can actually change the pitch rate, or the more likely to range the pitch rate of your samples to make it high or low. Okay. And then now we get to the probabilities. So as you can see with the percentage sign with like a watermark drop, the prob sections represents the probabilities, as I mentioned before, that this arranges the values when you're actually playing directly onto the step sequencer track, which I'm going to show you right now here. As you can tell by this lines here, okay, there's actually assigns the probable tracks onto their keyboard slicer chain here, where you want to assign or play the values when making your tracks. But for now, this is automatically set down to 4 slices once I assign them. But for here, since we're only going to deal with this for this tutorial, we're going to change it back up to 1 slice at a time to show you an example how the step sequencer actually works. So we can start going on right now in just a few seconds. So before you do that, the first thing you have to do is make sure you set your button on the right hand corner where I'm highlighting right now as mono. You make sure you turn this on, because that will actually play the sample at a unison playback rather than playing it as a doubling effect. So that way it doesn't create all those echoes or mumbo jumbo and so on when playing your samples. The second part here is make sure you change the speed rate of your sequencing speed up to 4, which represents the normal beat rate. See again when playing your sample tracks. Just to give you a brief idea of the speed rates here. So for instance, when you slow it down to speed /3, that represents it's going to play back in a 3rd speed rate, and then speed /seconds plays in a half back speed, and then speed /1 will represent a faster playback speed. So for now, just set it to 4 as a normal rate, so that way it doesn't play that fast or slow, whatever. Here you got your starting points where you want to start the sample playback on each of your slices, okay, when assigning to your beat marker tracks here, okay. And then the next one, size, of course, represents the number of slices that you design with when you are playing around with the step sequencer track. So of course, the shorter the size rate, the shorter that the sample playback will play. But for now, let's just leave it up to 16 default. And then here, the sequence controls represents how you want to play the sample rate, either on the forward side or the backward side, which is pretty useful, of course, when you're playing around with certain sample tracks that you want to like either flip around or just reverse it in one side or to the other while changing the beat patterns or variations on each step. And then here, like, you got the random values, which is R1, and then R2, which will either give like a random variation of how you play back the samples. Now, just to show you how it actually works, this is how I just figured out if you decide to play this at a, let's say, like a live event. So imagine that if you have like one of those MPC beat slicing machines, but at the same time you want like have a second-hand slicer tool that you want to arrange your beats at, you actually have to do like this. Go to enter song mode, and then highlight the number of tracks on your canvas that you want it to play back with. Let's say you want to just play up to 8 beats within the 8 bars track. Okay, so after you're done, select the number of tracks that you want it to play back on your canvas. Then go back here onto your slicer mode, and then make sure you want to select the slice numbers that you wanted to play your samples, okay, on each of your tracks. So for this example here, as I play along within the FL Studio, you can definitely see that it's actually playing based on the beat markers that you play out. Of course, in my opinion, this is not really an effective way when it comes to like editing your tracks or sequencing your beats with other VST programs, because in the next section I'm going to show you a secret way on how to sequence your tracks efficiently without the need of all this sections that I just showed you when selecting directly onto your FL Studio canvas. So as we get to that part later on, the next step here under the slicer program is you got your attacks section and then your gates. Of course, the attack, just like when you play around with the shape envelopes, this will allow you to shape your sample waves on how fast or slow that you want it to bring the samples all together, excuse me, when playing back your track. So of course, the higher the attack, the softer the sample will play, okay, as we get an example with. And then same here, when going down to halfway, you can hear the difference in the softness. And then same thing with gate. With the gate values that you see that are assigned to your beat selections, the higher the gate number, the note will play on a whole note or the whole sample note that's played back on your MIDI tracks. Okay, but the lower the value, the shorter the note will play, as I show you in this example. Let's put this down here. So as you can see, it actually kind of creates like a little truncation of playing back your samples when lowering down the gate values. But this is highly effective when you're either like creating like those transient gate type effects when making like trance music or EDM, house or rap and so on. When it comes to creating your sample tracks. And then level, and then on the bottom section here you got level, which of course is the obvious way that you want to make your sounds either higher or lower enough when playing back your tracks. Now, as we get down to the bottom section here, you got your main section where it actually displays your outputs. You can actually change the stair width of your sound samples altogether, while changing the gain level effects and also the volume level as well. You even got your limiter, which actually creates like a brick wall when limiting your samples to avoid clipping if necessary. And then you got the FX bypass, which of course that actually bypasses all the FX sessions right here on this menu, which we'll get to that later on the next video tutorial. Now, pattern mode actually assigns the patterns that's based on your sequencer track to here if you want to create more slicing effects onto different pattern change on any pattern values. Of course, with this kind of section, I'm about to tell you right now that this is kind of unnecessary when working in FL Studio, because the best efficient way for all of us FL Studio users out there is that you don't really have to use the step sequencer at all when creating your beat sequence tracks or whatever. So let me give you an example right now, is that the better option is you go down to MIDI, okay, on this MIDI section here, and turn on MIDI trigger on. Now you got three modes. The first mode represents a sample track that can be played on the C2 note, and then same thing with mode 2. This is only effective when you're playing like a MIDI keyboard or an FPC type beat pad instrument that you can assign your sample tracks to play within those MIDI instruments. But the best way to play your tracks on the FL Studio's keyboard, or the sequencer pattern that is, which is right here, you select mode 3. So don't forget, make sure you select mode 3 because it's the most effective way to play your sample tracks on each of your sound designs. So the manual states here that the notes can only play either by C3 up until D#4, but as you can notice, when playing your samples via FL Studio, the note starts out playing around C5, which is so if I wanted to arrange a note, excuse me again, if you wanted to arrange a note to be played at a whole sample section based on your beat markers, you can now arrange the whole notes to play in one stretch, which I'm going to show you how, like so. So as I arrange the whole notes play together in each of the note tracks one by one, this will now play the sounds evenly without changing the values or the mechanism of your high slicer program. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that your notes in the FL Studio keyboard sequencer are all quantized in a equal fashion, as you can see here. Make sure they line up very evenly with the whole notes on each of your beat tracks. And once that's done, then you can actually play out seamlessly when editing your sample tracks. Of course, you can also put this back on pattern mode as well to play the patterns evenly. See how easy it is? And then now you can also try to change it up a bit by changing the notes around to make it more of a choppy effect. Just like so. Something's wrong here. Let's see. Okay, that's why. So to do this, we got to go back to here. Make sure you slide these back to the slice 4 ones, and so on. And that way it doesn't create like a separation. Also here, make sure this is also set back to the original spot, and it should actually work. So let's give this a try. Okay. Now let's say that I want to change it into reverse. Yes, you can actually do this as long as you assign your slices all together in one beat slice per section. And then here you can also try to arrange the tempo sections one by one, which of course I'm going to show you this how it's done. And then here you can actually turn it back onto the regular waveforms, which of course I'm just showing it for demonstration purposes. And then when you hold down Control and then left mouse click, you actually turn the value down when you set it to 0. So one thing I wanted to add here is the next section you'll see on the very bottom here is the step lock mode. Of course, step locks, which of course represents a switch that allows you to, when you turn this on, this will help prevent yourself from changing the values when assigning your beat sections on each of your tracks. Of course, it says here that you can actually like change it right now, but usually this actually is effective when when you're actually playing around with your step sequencer here. But of course, you don't really have to worry about using that if you're actually going to play that within your canvas or on the pattern sequencer when using FL Studio. So overall, this high slicer sequencer tool is pretty much useful when making your beats in a professional manner. If you need to save some time to sequence your sample tracks without having the use of assigning each of your samples based on trial and error. But on the other hand, like you can still actually do a sample threshold method to analyze your sample tracks by just clicking on the detector, and this allows you to change the sensitivity of your sample tracks markers to assign which markers you want to assign on your sample beats. So I'm going to show you an example right now how that's all played out. So let's just leave this marker all, click on detector, and then this will actually select the number of markers that it will actually play out, and you just have to assign your sections one by one where you want it to play at. So this is quite somewhat similar when using also in the SliceX in FL Studio, but to be honest, this one provides less CPU usage, unlike the the SliceX from FL Studio. It might create higher CPU usage when you're using this sensitivity sample threshold way too much if you're going to assign that much sample tracks. Of course, some producers actually use this as a way to search their own sample tracks or beats depending on the melody. But on the other hand, for most basic users, you can actually pretty much use the auto slicer instead to create your basic beat slicing methods. So let's get another example here. We can pull out either 8 slices, and then it'll actually automatically select the slices on the sample rate based on the tempo that you make from your tracks. So it evenly sets the tempo. No, it evenly sets the markers in a perfect sync fashion, and you can actually now play your beats on the spot. So, with all that said, to be very honest, when I first bought this plugin, it actually took me like almost 15 to 30 minutes to figure out how this whole thing works. But until now, I actually made my own template or preset example, which I can show you right now how I did it. And this is how mostly I would probably start working out when it comes to creating my next beat sample projects and so forth. So as you can tell, I set first up to get like 8 slices on each track, and then leave everything default, but then make sure I turn the mono switch on and then set the speed rate to 4. That way it'll actually play out evenly. And then when I select the when I select the number of slices that I want it to play out, okay, like so, then I can go ahead and go straight to my keyboard, sample right here, and then I can actually assign the tracks that I want to play out without the need of going through all of those hidden menu features and so on. So just to give a last part of the tutorial, is actually okay and safely to record your tracks onto FL Studio. As you can, I'm going to show you how to do on the video. So for this example, for this first pattern, so let's say that you select the pattern and you go to song mode, okay, and it will actually play out the sample here, okay, just like that. You go to your mixer. Make sure that you assign your channel, okay, onto your high slicer program. Then you go back to your mixer and then select the record button here. Make sure you save in a file. This is now just type in high slicer example 1, right? So actually, once you actually recorded, then select the beats that you want to assign the track to be recorded, and then go to this recording, and that will actually render the file based on your song selection, just like so, as you can see here. So when you mute this pattern off, now you can actually play out the sample file that you just recorded. Same thing like the original. Okay, so there you have it. So this is the tutorial video of how the High Slicer program works. Okay, again, which is designed by High Plugins. And if you do like this tutorial, please give a like, share, and comment, and subscribe to my channel, Galatra Productions. And also, please visit the website highplugins.com for more of their high plugin specials and updates, okay, based on their programs. So just to give a brief summary, make sure 1, you set your tempo to the assigned sample track that you load up in your sample program. Okay, don't worry about this for now. We're done with that. But also keep in mind that keep in mind that you make sure that you switch this mono button here to the on position, and then set the speed rate down to 4, so that it plays out normally. And then 3, make sure that you set your MIDI trigger to the on position and select mode 3 when you're actually using FL Studio or above. The version I'm using is FL Studio 12.4.1, which of course is like the older version of FL Studio, but it should work the same way with FL Studio 20 and beyond. Now for Ableton users, I don't sure if this actually works for you with this type of program, but like I said, you probably have to go to High Plugins website and contact the support team to see if it actually works for your DAW before you purchase the program. Okay, so that's all I have to say for now, and I do hope you enjoy this tutorial. So thank you again for watching this program about the High Slicer, and I hope everyone will have a great, wonderful weekend, and keep making beats. Don't stop what you're doing. So you have a great day. Take care. Have a wonderful way of making your music, and never stop trying. You take care. Bye bye.